The enemy fleet hovered in the darkness of space, their sleek ships forming a blockade around the besieged planet of Varlock. For centuries, the Vashari Dominion had ruled this sector with an iron grip, enslaving weaker species, crushing rebellions, and expanding their empire with ruthless efficiency. They had never feared any foe, until now, until humanity arrived. The UN's nemesis loomed in the void, a monster of war forged from Earth's unrelenting defiance. It was unlike any ship the Vashari had ever encountered, twice the size of their largest dreadnought, its hull blackened by the scars of 100 battles and bristling with weapons that could tear apart entire fleets. The name Nemesis was whispered like a death sentence among the alien ranks. From the bridge, Admiral Elias Varian stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed on the viewscreen. The Vashari fleet was vast, 300 warships against his lone battleship. The odds were, by all logical measures, impossible, except humanity never cared for logic when it came to war. "Admiral," Commander Sarah Holt said, her voice steady. "They're hailing us." Varian exhaled slowly. "Let them speak." The alien's face flickered onto the screen, a reptilian creature draped in ceremonial armor, its golden scales reflecting the dim light. High Warlord Koresh of the Vashari Dominion glared at Varian with undisguised contempt. "Humans," Koresh hissed, "you defy the Dominion, yet you stand alone. Surrender your vessel, and I may grant your species a merciful death." Varian chuckled, shaking his head. "You don't understand, do you?" His voice was almost amused. "We're not here to negotiate." Koresh's slitted eyes narrowed. "Then you have sealed your fate." Varian raised an eyebrow. "No, Warlord, you have." With a slight nod, he gave the command. "Fire." The Nemesis roared to life. The main cannon, an experimental weapon designed to harness the destructive power of a dying star, unleashed a beam of searing white energy. The first Vashari battleship in its path didn't just explode. It disintegrated, torn apart at the atomic level. The rest of the Vashari fleet had mere seconds to react before the Nemesis rained hell upon them. Its railguns fired at impossible velocities, ripping through shields as though they were paper. Swarms of autonomous drone fighters poured from its hangars, weaving between enemy ships, tearing them apart with surgical precision. Koresh's expression shifted from arrogance to horror. "Impossible!" he snarled. "One ship cannot—" "One human warship is all it takes," Varian interrupted coldly. "You should have learned that when we burned your last colony to the ground." The battle was not a battle. It was a massacre. One by one, Vashari warships met their end in blinding explosions. Escape pods were ignored. Mercy was not on the agenda. Humanity had seen what the Dominion did to their prisoners. Entire colonies reduced to labor camps, civilians experimented on, children taken and never seen again. This was not just war. It was vengeance. Varian watched as the enemy fleet crumbled, their command structure dissolving into chaos. The Vashari had always believed they were the apex predators of the galaxy, but they had never encountered humanity at war, and humanity did not forgive. As the last enemy vessel erupted into a fireball, Varian turned his attention to the planet below. Varlock was a fortress world, home to billions of Vashari. It had once been a symbol of their might. Now it was simply a target. "Sir," Holt said, hesitating. "Orders?" Varian's voice was devoid of hesitation. "Glass it." The Nemesis began its final act. Orbital bombardment rained down upon the planet, turning cities into craters, forests into ash, rivers into boiling steam. The screams of the Vashari echoed through intercepted transmissions before silence took their place. A wasteland, just like the countless human colonies the Dominion had destroyed before. Varian turned away from the screen. Set course for the next Dominion world, he ordered. This war doesn't end until they beg for extinction. And with that, the Nemesis disappeared into the void, leaving only fire and ruin in its wake. The Nemesis sailed through the black abyss of space, its colossal frame nearly silent as it moved toward its next target. The bridge was eerily calm, despite the destruction they had just wrought upon Varlock. The enemy's screams, their desperate cries for help, had already faded into the background of war. Admiral Varian stood motionless, staring out at the endless void. His reflection in the reinforced glass looked almost alien to him, his once sharp features now hardened by the weight of command. He had long abandoned the idea of peace. Peace was a lie the Dominion had spat at humanity while putting their boots on Earth's throat. "Sir," Commander Holt's voice cut through the silence. "Our next target is Tryon 7. Intelligence suggests it's a major supply hub for the Dominion's core fleets." Varian didn't turn. "What's the estimated population?" Holt hesitated. "Roughly 20 million. The bridge remained silent, tension thickening the air. 20 million Vashari. Soldiers, civilians, workers, children. A hesitation hung in the air, a moment of humanity clawing at the crew's conscience. "Good," Varian finally said. "If we cripple their supply lines, we cripple their war." Holt nodded, but said nothing. She had been with Varian since the first retaliation against the Dominion, had seen the atrocities committed against humanity firsthand. There was no room for doubt, no space for mercy. Mercy was what had let the Dominion expand unchecked. Mercy was what had cost them Earth's outer colonies. A transmission interrupted their thoughts. "Incoming message from the Dominion, sir," one of the officers reported. "High Warlord Koresh survived. He wants to talk." Varian smirked. "Patch him through." The reptilian warlord's face flickered onto the screen. This time there was no arrogance, only barely contained fury and fear. "You will suffer for what you've done, human," Koresh growled, his voice filled with venom. "The Dominion does not fall so easily." Varian leaned forward slightly, his expression cold. "It already has. You just haven't realized it yet." Koresh bared his fangs. "You are monsters!" Varian let out a short laugh, void of humor. "Monsters! You enslaved our people. You burned our worlds. And now when we return the favor, you want to cry foul? No, Warlord. You made this war. We're just finishing it." Koresh's claws curled into fists. "Humanity will not survive this. The Dominion will strike back." "You won't have the chance," Varian said, his voice sharp as a blade. "This is not a war of survival for us. This is extermination." Koresh's face twisted with rage, but Varian didn't give him the satisfaction of another word. He cut the transmission and turned back to his crew. "Prepare the Hellstorm missiles. I want Tryon 7 wiped from the maps." No one questioned the order. The Nemesis pressed forward, carrying humanity's wrath across the stars. The Nemesis slipped through the void, silent and unrelenting. Tryon 7 loomed ahead, a planet of steel and industry, its surface covered in sprawling shipyards and supply depots that fed the Dominion's war machine. It was no ordinary target. This was a world designed to fuel their empire's endless expansion, a hub of resources that had supported the enslavement of entire species. But today, it would burn. On the bridge, Admiral Varian watched the tactical display. Thousands of Dominion vessels cluttered Tryon 7's orbit, transport ships, refineries, battleships in dry dock. The planet's defensive fleet was nowhere near as large as Varlock's had been. The Dominion hadn't expected a direct assault. A mistake. "Status of the Hellstorm missiles?" Varian asked, his voice calm. "Fully armed and ready," Commander Holt confirmed. "We can wipe out the planet's atmosphere in a single strike." Varian nodded. "Fire." The Nemesis came alive. From its underbelly, massive silos opened, and the Hellstorm payloads were launched. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward Trion 7, each one containing a payload designed not for precision, but for annihilation. Planetary shields flared to life, but it was futile. The missiles didn't aim for cities. They detonated in the upper atmosphere. The sky turned red, then black as firestorms swept across the world. Below, the surface of Trion 7 descended into chaos. Factories crumbled, supply depots exploded, and the massive orbital shipyards broke apart, sending flaming debris crashing down on the cities below. Smoke choked the air, blocking out the sun. The Dominion forces tried to fight back. A swarm of defense ships surged toward the Nemesis, desperate to protect their crumbling world. "Incoming enemy fire," an officer reported. "Deploy the drones. Return fire." The swarm of enemy ships barely made it halfway before the Nemesis responded. Drone fighters surged forth, moving like a plague of mechanical death, cutting through the enemy ranks with brutal efficiency. The ship's railguns and laser batteries opened fire, slicing apart the Dominion's defense forces as if they were nothing more than insects. On the surface, the Dominion's command centers sent out desperate distress calls. Messages flooded into the human battleship, pleading for surrender, for mercy, for anything other than what was coming. Varian ignored them all. "You never showed us mercy," he muttered under his breath. He watched as the planet turned to ash. Trion 7 was no longer a world. It was a graveyard. Silence fell over the bridge, save for the hum of the ship's systems. The battle was over. There was no celebration, no cheers of victory, only the cold realization that this war had no end, not until the Dominion itself was nothing more than a whisper in history. Varian exhaled. Set course for the next target. The Nemesis disappeared into the void, leaving behind only smoke, ruin, and the dying screams of an empire. The silence on the bridge of the Nemesis was deafening. No one spoke, no one moved. The screen still showed the burning wreckage of Trion 7, the massive industrial world reduced to a wasteland in mere hours. Even from orbit, the scars were visible. Craters where entire cities once stood, firestorms raging through the ruins. The once thriving supply hub of the Dominion was now nothing more than a drifting corpse. Admiral Elias Varian let out a slow breath. There was no satisfaction in what they had done. No joy, only necessity. "They're calling us monsters," Commander Holt said quietly, reading intercepted Dominion transmissions. "Their military channels are in chaos. Some are calling for all-out retaliation. Others—" She hesitated. "Others are already speaking of surrender." Varian scoffed. "Surrender? After what they did to us? Number, they don't get that option." His eyes were cold, distant. "Not yet." The Dominion had enslaved human colonies for decades. When Earth had finally fought back, it wasn't out of ambition. It was out of survival. The war had started with hope. It had turned into vengeance. "Set course for Jaraxxus Prime," Varian ordered. A murmur ran through the crew. Jaraxxus Prime wasn't just another Dominion world. It was one of their core planets, a cultural and political heart of their empire. A direct assault would send a message across the galaxy. Nowhere was safe. "Sir," Lieutenant Moreau, the communications officer, spoke up. "We're receiving a transmission, but not from the Dominion." Varian frowned. "Who is it?" "It's from the Talani Confederacy. They're offering a ceasefire, mediation between us and the Dominion." The Talani were neutral in this war. They had watched from the sidelines as the bloodshed unfolded, unwilling to take a side. But now they were intervening. Now, after humanity had proven what it was capable of. "Put them through." The screen flickered, and a Talani diplomat appeared. A tall, avian-like creature with silver feathers and piercing golden eyes. "Admiral Varian," the Talani envoy began, his voice smooth, calculated. "We have watched this conflict unfold, and we urge you to reconsider your actions. The Dominion has suffered enough." Varian raised an eyebrow. "Enough?" His voice was laced with quiet anger. "Were you there when the Dominion burned our colonies? When they slaughtered our people like cattle? Where was your intervention then?" The Talani envoy didn't flinch. "We understand your anger, Admiral, but this war has reached a turning point. If you continue, it will not be war. It will be extermination." Varian leaned forward, his gaze cold and unwavering. "That's the idea." A long silence. The Talani envoy studied him, as if searching for something, some hint of hesitation, some remnant of humanity's old self before the war had changed them. But there was none. "Admiral," the envoy finally said, "the galaxy is watching. If you destroy the Dominion completely, humanity will not be seen as liberators. You will be seen as conquerors, and one day someone will rise to do to you what you are doing to them." Varian smirked, but there was no humor in it. "Let them try." The screen cut to black. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. No one questioned the Admiral's decision. No one argued. They had all lost too much to care about diplomacy now. Holt shifted uncomfortably. "Do you think the other empires will intervene?" Varian sighed. "They won't move unless we make them, and by the time they decide, it will already be too late." The Nemesis jumped to FTL, streaking through the stars like a shadow of death. Jaraxxus Prime awaited. The Nemesis emerged from FTL like a phantom of destruction, slipping into the orbit of Jaraxxus Prime, one of the Dominion's core worlds. This wasn't some distant colony or a supply hub. It was a beating heart of the Dominion Empire, a world teeming with billions of their kind. It was their pride, their history, their culture. And soon, it would burn. Admiral Varian stood at the command console, watching the massive planet fill the bridge's viewport. Jaraxxus Prime was beautiful in its own way, covered in sprawling cities with towering spires of obsidian and gold. Their structures were sleek, their technology advanced, but beneath all the grandeur, it was still the home of slavers and tyrants. Commander Holt exhaled sharply. "They're hailing us, sir. High Chancellor Rithakis himself." The Dominion's leader. Varian nodded. "Put him through." The screen flickered to life, revealing Rithakis, a towering reptilian figure with dark emerald scales and piercing yellow eyes. Unlike Warlord Koresh, who had snarled and spat threats, Rithakis sat calmly in his ornate throne, watching Varian with a calculated expression. "Admiral Varian," Rithakis said smoothly, "you stand at the gates of my world. What will you do?" Varian's face was emotionless. "What I have done to every world before this." Rithakis nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "We underestimated you. We saw humanity as a lesser species, weak, divided. But now I see something else. I see a force that even the Dominion cannot contain." Varian tilted his head slightly. "If you're about to beg, don't waste my time." The Dominion leader's lips curled into something resembling a smirk. "Beg? Number, but I will offer you something no human leader has ever had before. Dominion surrender." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Even Holt's usual icy demeanor cracked for a moment. Varian's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Rithakis leaned forward. "Withdraw your forces. Stop your war. In return, we will recognize humanity as an equal power. The Dominion will cease all hostilities, return all human prisoners, and sign a non-aggression pact that will last for generations." Silence. It was everything humanity had fought for, everything the war had been about. The nightmare could finally end. with Earth victorious, with humanity free. Varian exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. And what about justice? Rathacus blinked. Justice? For the billions you enslaved, the colonies you burned, the families you ripped apart, Varian said, his voice calm but razor-sharp. You expect us to just shake hands and move on? The Dominion leader hesitated for a moment, then spread his clawed hands. We cannot change the past, Admiral. But we can shape the future. If you destroy us now, you do not just kill an empire, you create a vacuum, and something worse will rise to fill it. You think yourself the harbinger of justice, but tell me, when does justice become vengeance? Varian stared at him, unblinking. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Something almost human. Then it was gone. We passed the line between justice and vengeance a long time ago, Varian said quietly. Holt stiffened. Sir, are you saying, fire the Hellstorm missiles? A final silence. The death of diplomacy. Admiral, Rathacus said, his voice quieter now. Do not do this. Varian held his gaze. Goodbye, Chancellor. The screen cut off. The missiles launched. Jaraxxus Prime's sky turned to fire. The planet's defense grid erupted in a desperate attempt to intercept the incoming devastation. But it was useless. The Nemesis had planned for this. Humanity had perfected planetary extermination. Explosions rippled across the world. Towers collapsed. Entire cities were swallowed by firestorms. Billions screamed, and then the screams faded into static. The Nemesis did not wait to watch the final moments. As the planet burned behind them, Varian turned away. Set course for the Dominion home world. It was almost over. The Nemesis tore through the void, a specter of death on its final approach. The Dominion homeworld, Korthion Prime, lay ahead. A planet that had ruled the galaxy for centuries, an empire's heart now awaiting the fate of those before it. The end had come. Admiral Varian stood at the bridge, his expression carved from stone. The fiery wreckage of Jaraxxus Prime still burned in his mind, but there was no regret, no hesitation. The war had started long ago, with Dominion warships glassing human colonies, reducing entire civilizations to slaves. Now, humanity was merely repaying the debt in full. Enemy fleet detected, Commander Holt reported. Their last line of defense, estimated 3,000 ships, all converging on our position. Varian exhaled. All that's left of their once mighty armada. Korthion Prime had thrown everything into this final stand. Battleships, cruisers, swarms of fighters. The Dominion had ruled through force and fear for centuries, but now, faced with extinction, they had no choice but to fight to the last. They're hailing us, Lieutenant Moreau said. Let me guess, Varian muttered. More pleas for mercy? No, sir, Moreau said, voice grim. They say they will fight to the last warrior. No surrender. A smirk played at the corner of Varian's lips. For once, they understand us. A moment of silence settled over the bridge. There was no need for grand speeches, no need for theatrics. Everyone aboard the Nemesis knew what they were about to do. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Engage. The void ignited. The Nemesis moved like a predator, its weapons ripping through the Dominion fleet with precision and brutality. Drone swarms danced through the battlefield, cutting apart enemy fighters like insects trapped in a storm. Railguns thundered, spewing tungsten slugs at near-light speeds, shattering hulls like paper. Dominion ships fought back with everything they had. Plasma beams lanced through the darkness. Missile barrages rained toward the Nemesis. But it was hopeless. Humanity's warship was a fortress of destruction, its defenses unbreakable, its firepower unmatched. Varian watched as the enemy fleet crumbled. One by one, their battleships fell. Command ships detonated in blinding flashes, their crews silenced in an instant. Some Dominion vessels, seeing the inevitability of defeat, tried to flee. The Nemesis did not allow it. "No survivors," Varian ordered. Torpedoes chased down the stragglers, turning their ships into floating wreckage. The Dominion had once terrorized the stars. Now their greatest fleet was nothing more than debris, and Corthion Prime lay defenseless. "Prepare the Hellstorm missiles," Varian commanded. Holt hesitated. "Sir, there are billions down there, civilians." Varian's jaw tightened. "Did they spare ours?" Holt said nothing. She knew the answer. The missiles launched. Corthion Prime's atmosphere turned to fire. The planet's great cities, monuments to an empire that had enslaved species across the stars, collapsed beneath waves of destruction. Plasma storms erupted, oceans boiled, the land itself cracked under the weight of devastation. Humanity had not just won the war. They had erased the Dominion from existence. Varian turned away from the screen. "It's done," he said quietly. Silence filled the bridge. The war that had defined their generation, that had burned through entire civilizations, was over. For the first time in history, humanity stood alone as the dominant force in the galaxy. Varian let out a slow breath. There was no victory song, no celebration. Just the quiet hum of the Nemesis as it disappeared into the stars, leaving nothing but ash in its wake. The void of space stretched endlessly before them, vast and indifferent. The Nemesis drifted in silence, its weapons cooling, its mission complete. Corthion Prime, once the heart of the Dominion, was now a graveyard, a smoldering ruin where billions had drawn their final breath. No cries remained, no fleets, no desperate last stands. Humanity had finished what it started. Admiral Varian stood at the bridge, staring at the dead world below. He had imagined this moment for years. He had envisioned vengeance, the thrill of triumph, the satisfaction of knowing humanity had avenged its dead. But now, looking at the barren wasteland they had created, there was only emptiness. Holt approached him cautiously. "Sir, we've intercepted transmissions across the galaxy. The other empires, they've seen what we've done." Varian didn't turn to her. "And?" She hesitated. "Fear. Some are calling for an alliance against us. Others are silent, watching, waiting." Varian closed his eyes briefly. Of course, this was inevitable. Humanity had not just destroyed an enemy, they had reshaped the balance of power. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species, some stronger, some weaker, all now forced to reevaluate their place. "They fear us," Holt continued, lowering her voice. "They see what we're capable of." Varian exhaled. "Good." Silence lingered between them, thick and heavy. "What now?" Holt finally asked. "We've won. There's no one left to fight." Varian turned away from the viewport, his expression unreadable. "There will always be someone left to fight." Across the galaxy, distant empires whispered in fear. Governments held secret meetings, debating whether humanity was now the greatest threat to existence itself. Some would submit, others would prepare for war. It didn't matter. Humanity had risen, and it would never bow again. The Nemesis cut through the darkness of space, moving like a silent wraith. The war was over. The Dominion, the great empire that had once ruled the galaxy, was now nothing but dust and ruin. And yet, the galaxy did not celebrate. It trembled. Varian stood at the command console, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of known star systems. One by one, reports trickled in from human intelligence networks, alien fleets mobilizing, fortifications being reinforced, uneasy truces between long-standing enemies forming. The message was clear. The galaxy was terrified. Humanity was no longer a minor species fighting for survival. It was now the dominant force, the apex predator among the stars. And the rest of the galaxy was trying to decide whether to submit or strike first. Commander Holt approached, her expression tight. "We're receiving diplomatic messages from multiple species. Some are congratulating us. Some are less diplomatic." Varian smirked. "Let me guess, they call us monsters?" Holt nodded. "Some are calling us the Butchers of Korthion. Others are demanding answers. They want to know if we intend to conquer them next." Varian let out a slow breath, his fingers tapping against the console. "And what do you think, Commander?" Holt hesitated. "I think they're scared, sir. I think they believe we'll do to them what we did to the Dominion." Varian turned his gaze toward the viewport, watching the endless stretch of space. He had spent his entire career fighting a war for survival, for vengeance. Now that the war was over, he wasn't sure what was left. "We send a message back," he said finally. Holt straightened. "What do we tell them?" Varian's expression was cold, unreadable. "We tell them the truth. Humanity will not start wars, but if they raise a hand against us, we will finish them." Holt gave a slow nod. "Understood." She turned to relay the message, but before she could take a step, another alert flashed on the screen. "Sir," Moreau called out from the comms station, "we're detecting a large-scale energy surge in deep space. Unknown origin." Varian frowned. "Explain." Moreau's hands moved swiftly across the controls, analyzing the data. "It's not a fleet, not a weapon. It's something different. A gravitational anomaly forming outside of mapped star systems. Whatever it is, it's big." Varian's brow furrowed. "How big?" Moreau hesitated. "Large enough to destabilize space-time in the surrounding systems. This isn't just some anomaly. It's a rupture." The bridge went silent. Varian exchanged a glance with Holt. They had fought the Dominion, crushed their empire, and now, just as the war had ended, something new was emerging. "Location?" Varian asked. "Far beyond any explored territory," Moreau answered. "Deep space, past the galactic rim." Varian nodded slowly. "Then we investigate. Prepare the fleet." Holt stiffened. "Sir, we just ended one war. Are we really about to rush headfirst into another unknown?" Varian turned to her, his expression calm but resolute. "We didn't survive the Dominion just to cower in the dark. Whatever's out there, we'll face it." The Nemesis adjusted course, its engines roaring to life. Humanity had won the war. Now it was time to see what lay beyond. The Nemesis moved through the void, its engines humming softly as it ventured into uncharted space. Behind it, a fleet of humanity's finest warships followed in tight formation. Silent, prepared, watching. The war with the Dominion was over, but now something new loomed ahead. The anomaly. Admiral Varian stood at the bridge, his gaze locked on the holographic display. The readings were unlike anything they had encountered before. A gravitational rift, larger than any known celestial body, pulsed at the edge of the galaxy. Space itself seemed to ripple around it, distorting the fabric of reality. "Status?" Varian asked. Commander Holt, standing beside him, shook her head. "Still no known origin. No signals, no transmissions. Just energy. And a lot of it." Lieutenant Moreau, stationed at the sensor console, leaned forward. "Sir, we're detecting movement within the anomaly." Varian's eyes narrowed. "Define movement." Moreau's fingers danced across the controls, pulling up enhanced visuals. The display flickered, revealing a swirling mass of darkness. Then something shifted. Shadows coalesced into shapes, unnatural and massive. silhouettes of what could only be ships emerging from the distortion. Everyone on the bridge froze. "Unknown vessels detected," Moreau confirmed, her voice tight. "Size impossible. Some of them are larger than entire cities." The Nemesis had faced behemoth-class Dominion warships before, but this was different. These things were not just large, they were unnatural, shifting between states of solidity and void, as if the laws of physics barely applied to them. A voice crackled over the fleet-wide comms. "This is Captain Darnell of the Vanguard. What the hell are we looking at?" Varian stared at the screen. "Something old." Holt swallowed hard. "Sir, they're moving toward us." Varian clenched his jaw. "Comms, try to hail them." Moreau initiated an open-frequency transmission. "This is the United Terran Navy. Identify yourselves." Silence. Then a sound. Not words, not static. A deep, resonant noise like a chorus of voices speaking in layered frequencies. It wasn't a language. It was something deeper, something felt rather than heard. A presence pressing into their minds. The bridge crew stiffened. Moreau shuddered, clutching her head. I can't cut transmission," Varian ordered immediately. The sound stopped, but a lingering unease remained in the air. Holt exhaled sharply. "Sir, what the hell was that?" Varian didn't answer. His instincts screamed that whatever lay beyond that rift was not something humanity had ever encountered before, not even in myths, not in the oldest of alien records. This was beyond the Dominion, beyond war. This was something ancient. "Energy spike!" Moreau yelled. "They're charging weapons!" The bridge exploded into action. Alarms blared as the massive shadow ships surged forward, their forms twisting through space with unnatural speed. "All ships, battle stations," Varian commanded. "Open fire!" The Nemesis unleashed hell. Railguns fired in rapid succession, spewing tungsten slugs at near-light speed. Plasma batteries roared, sending superheated destruction toward the incoming threat. The fleet followed, weapons lighting up the void. For a moment it seemed like humanity would do what it always did. Fight, conquer, survive. Then the shadows struck back. Lances of pure blackness lashed out, consuming light itself. The first wave of human ships was torn apart, their hulls crumbling into nothingness before even registering damage. A Dominion fleet would have been obliterated instantly. But humanity was not the Dominion. "Adaptive shielding," Varian barked. "Redirect energy to defensive arrays." The Nemesis shifted, its barriers reforming in real time, countering the unknown energy signatures. The surviving ships did the same, holding formation, learning. Humanity was adaptable. It always had been. The battle raged in the abyss, fire and darkness clashing. The Nemesis weaved between attacks, countering with overwhelming firepower, but for every enemy vessel destroyed, more emerged from the rift. Holt's face was pale. "Sir, there's no end to them." Varian gritted his teeth. They had destroyed the Dominion. Now they were fighting something even worse. And for the first time in a long, long time, he wasn't sure if humanity would survive. The void was a battleground of fire and shadow. Humanity's fleet fought with relentless fury, adapting, countering, surviving. But the enemy was endless. For every shadow ship torn apart by the Nemesis's guns, more emerged from the rift, shifting between dimensions, absorbing damage that should have obliterated them. Admiral Varian gripped the console, his mind racing. He had never faced an enemy like this. Not even the Dominion had possessed such unnatural resilience. Humanity had waged war across the stars. But this was something different. Something beyond war. "Shields at 30%, Holt called out, her voice tight with urgency. "If we don't retreat—" "We can't retreat," Varian cut her off. "If we run, they follow. And if they reach human space, we lose everything. A moment of silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. The reality was sinking in. The fleet couldn't win this battle, not in a conventional sense. Moreau's voice cracked over the chaos. "Sir, the rift. There's a destabilization occurring." Varian turned sharply. "Explain." Moreau's hands moved rapidly across the controls. It's like their presence is tied to the anomaly. It's their entry point. If we overload it. "We cut them off," Varian finished, understanding dawning. Holt's expression darkened. "And how exactly do we do that?" Varian's gaze flickered to the status of the Nemesis. The ship was battered, its shields flickering, its weapons burning hot. But its core was still intact. Humanity's warships were built for devastation, and nothing was more devastating than a controlled annihilation. He exhaled. "We take the Nemesis into the rift." The bridge went silent. Holt turned to him, her expression incredulous. "That's suicide." Varian's lips curled into a grim smile. "Number, that's war." Moreau's voice wavered. "Sir, if we detonate our core at the right frequency, it might be enough to collapse the anomaly. But that would mean this warship completes its mission," Varian finished. "The Nemesis was built to win wars, and that's exactly what it's going to do." Holt's jaw clenched. "We don't even know if this will work. We could be throwing ourselves into oblivion for nothing." Varian turned to the viewport, watching the endless tide of shadow ships advancing. "And if we do nothing, we guarantee oblivion." A heavy silence fell over the crew. Then, slowly, one by one, they nodded. "All hands," Varian commanded, his voice steady. "Prepare for final approach." The fleet received its orders. The Nemesis would charge into the rift, carrying a payload strong enough to collapse it. The surviving human ships would fall back, carrying word of what had happened here. They would remember. As the Nemesis surged forward, the enemy responded. The shadows swarmed, sensing the threat, pouring everything they had into stopping it. But humanity had already won the moment it chose to fight. Turrets fired relentlessly, carving a path through the abyss. Hull plating melted, shields flickered, warning alarms blared. But the ship never slowed. The rift loomed ahead, a pulsing wound in reality. Varian stood at the bridge, his expression calm. He had fought for humanity's survival his entire life. He had turned planets to dust, crushed empires, reshaped the fate of the galaxy, and now he would end the greatest threat it had ever known. "Detonation in 10 seconds, Moreau announced, her voice steady despite the storm around them. Holt met Varian's gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "See you on the other side," she said softly. Varian smirked. "No, you won't." And then, light. A burst of energy so powerful it tore through space itself. The Nemesis detonated, its core releasing enough force to collapse the rift, sealing the enemy away forever. The surviving human fleet watched as the anomaly imploded, the shadow ships vanishing with it, screaming soundlessly into the void. And then there was silence. Holt, aboard one of the retreating ships, stared at the empty space where the Nemesis had once been. Her fists clenched. Humanity had lost its greatest warship. But it had won. The message was clear, to any species who would threaten them, to any empire that thought humanity was weak. We do not start wars, but we finish them.